This is the first in a series of videos about installing the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System process known as EWIMS. The video series is a collaborative effort by the Great Lakes Comprehensive Center and the Michigan Department of Education, and is based on the work of the National High School Center. This overview video provides a review of the EWIMS 7-step process. Additional videos in the series explore each of the 7 steps. Early warning systems grew out of the premise that disengagement from school is a gradual process, and that students send identifiable signals that they are on the path to dropping out. As a result, data can be used to identify trends among students, enabling educators to intervene with those who are likely to leave the education system. From an initial focus on dropout prevention, early warning systems are evolving and being used in a variety of ways. For example, efforts are underway to examine and integrate school readiness indicators at the start of a student's schooling, as well as college and career readiness indicators during K-12 schooling. In early warning systems, educators systematically identify students who show signs of being at risk for dropping out of school. We know which indicators are predictive of a student falling off track in school, thanks to research done in Chicago, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. Early warning systems allow educators to take action by matching students with interventions to help them get back on track for graduation. This idea is loosely based on Bernhard and Love's research on data-driven decision-making. Let's talk about some studies that provide evidence for the effectiveness of early warning systems and, more specifically, the EWIMS process. Using data from Chicago Public Schools, the Consortium on Chicago School Research showed that one indicator, which signals when 9th graders are seriously falling off track toward earning a diploma, is 85% predictive of future dropout. Recent research by the Consortium shows that more than half of non-graduates can be identified as early as the end of the first semester of 9th grade, using either absentee or course failure rates. Researchers at the Johns Hopkins University Everyone Graduates Center found that as early as the 6th grade, school-based factors, such as low attendance and poor grades, can help predict who will later drop out. The researchers also demonstrated that 3 factors, attendance, behavior, and course performance, are the strongest predictors of dropping out, and that these factors are often interrelated. The researchers traced predictive indicators for dropping out of high school as far back as the 6th grade and found that the indicators predicted at least 50% of eventual dropouts. They also found that 6th grade students with one or more of the indicators had only a 15 to 25% chance of graduating from high school on time, or within 1 year of expected graduation. These findings have been validated many times through longitudinal studies in states and large districts. Understanding the data enables states and districts to invest in the most promising practices and policies. EWIMS, the Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, is a 7-step, data-driven decision-making process. Early warning systems experts at American Institutes for Research, AIR, developed EWIMS tools and guidance and have conducted research on the EWIMS process. EWIMS helps educators do the following: systematically identify students who show signs of being at risk of dropping out of school, examine the underlying causes of risk and match students' needs to interventions, monitor students' progress and the success of the interventions. EWIMS is an ongoing cycle of examining data and making decisions about supports and interventions to help students get back on track. A recently released rigorous impact study found that EWIMS is a promising evidence-based strategy for getting students back on track for graduation. In the study, 73 schools were randomly assigned to either use or not use EWIMS during the 2014-2015 school year. After 1 year of implementation, schools using EWIMS had reduced the percentages of students with chronic absences and course failures. Early warning indicators help educators flag which students are at risk of not graduating from high school. The symptoms of disengagement can show up as early as the 6th grade. Recent research by Attendance Works suggests that attendance may be an early warning indicator for children in lower grades. In multiple settings, research has shown that certain thresholds or cut points for attendance, behavior, and course performance are predictive of on-time graduation. When a student's attendance, behavior, or course performance, sometimes referred to as the ABCs, drops below a certain cut point, it is considered an early warning indicator or red flag. Students with red flags for any of these 3 indicators can be said to be at risk of not graduating on time, or to be showing signs of being off track for on-time graduation. Each early warning indicator can, alone, impact on-time high school graduation, and a combination of indicators can suggest additional challenges. However, every student is unique, and early warning indicators are merely symptoms. They do not account for the underlying causes of risk. It is important to understand that early warning indicators differ from student classifications. For example, although a special education code or a demographic category may impact a student's trajectory, the code or category may not itself be an early warning indicator. Even free or reduced price lunch status should not automatically be assumed to indicate risk. Demographic factors can provide helpful clues in some cases, but alone they are not predictive of student success or graduation. In EWIMS, red flags are merely a method of recognizing students who are struggling. We will discuss the root cause analysis later. These are the early warning indicators and their thresholds, or cut points, for the middle grades and high school. In high school, the thresholds are being absent for 10% or more of instructional time, failing to perform in 1 or more courses, and earning a 2.0 or lower GPA on a 4-point scale. Behavior thresholds are validated locally. In the middle grades, the thresholds are missing 20% or more of instructional time and failing an English language arts or math course. Behavior thresholds for middle school are also validated locally. A similar chart can be found in the EWIMS implementation guide. The Michigan Data Hub Early Warning Data Tool also uses information about student attendance, course failures, and behavior to identify, or flag, students who are at risk for not being at grade level, not being promoted to the next grade, or not graduating from high school. This table summarizes the early warning indicators in the Michigan Early Warning Data Tool, their respective thresholds, and the output indicator data available. So what can educators do with this information? Identifying students who are falling off track is only the beginning. Remember that the flag isn't the cause. It's the symptom of a deeper problem or barrier to learning. To decrease red flags, the EWIMS team also needs to take action and make data-driven decisions about student supports. When red flags arise, schools can identify the root causes of students being off track. They can match students to interventions. They can provide interventions with fidelity. They can monitor the progress of flagged students. And they can assess whether the interventions are working. These actions encompass the 7-step EWIMS process for making data-driven decisions about student supports. Now we'll review each of the 7 steps in the EWIMS process. More information about each step is contained in the other videos in this series. Each step has a corresponding video. Step 1 is to establish roles and responsibilities. In Step 1, you assemble a school team. The team will work together to decrease red flags. When creating the team, make sure that you have the right people and are meeting at the right frequency and for the right duration. Ask yourself these questions. Who should be at the table? How regularly should we meet? How much time should we meet for? Depending on your constraints, you may choose to integrate the EWIMS process into the work of an existing team rather than create a new team. The main role of the EWIMS team is to conduct meetings, communicate plans, solicit feedback from stakeholders, and monitor progress. There are additional tasks related to team meetings. It is important to have the right people to execute these responsibilities. For additional guidance on team roles and responsibilities, please see the Step 1 video. Step 2 relates to using an early warning data tool. Although we will look next at the Michigan Data Hub tool, which has a user-friendly early warning indicator section, the EWIMS process may be used with any data tool that displays attendance, behavior, and course performance data. The EWIMS process does not depend on the use of a specific tool. In Step 2, teams retrieve and review data reports from their early warning data tool of choice. The Michigan Data Hub Early Warning Data Tool is shown here. The data dashboard facilitates flagging students by early warning indicator. Here you can see a student summary page that contains red and green flags, signifying whether the student has reached or exceeded a warning threshold. Step 3 involves reviewing the data. In Step 3, the team breaks down information for flagged students into manageable pieces and begins to ask, what does the data tell us? To do this, team members review which students are, and are not, flagged for the attendance, behavior, and course performance indicators of risk. Then, team members explore the data and look for patterns. In this process, they begin to identify gaps in the data and ask questions. On the basis of this initial review of the data, the team strategizes about how to prioritize student needs. After identifying in Step 3 who is flagged, the team asks in Step 4 why the flag is occurring. This is the most challenging of the steps, and the one most commonly skipped. Here, the team asks questions such as, why is the student failing a class? Why is the student late for school? The answers to these questions are important for matching student needs with appropriate interventions. Schools often focus on academic factors rather than factors related to the community, the school environment, the family, or other issues that affect students. To understand the big picture of what is going on with a student, the team needs to consider contextual factors. Is the student working late in the day to supplement her family's income? Is the student tardy because he has to walk his younger siblings to school? Step 4 involves interpretation or making sense of the data. The EWIMS process uses data and educator expertise to understand the underlying causes of risk behind the flags. This is done by looking beyond the indicators and considering underlying factors, identifying students' strengths, exploring additional quantitative and qualitative data, and determining potential underlying causes of risk. Additional perspectives on a student can be helpful because underlying causes of risk are not always quantifiable. Functional behavior assessment and universal screening, as used in a multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, can be excellent data sources to include. Looking at data beyond the indicators can also help to identify common needs among groups of students, raise new questions, and enhance understanding of why students at a particular school are sliding off track for graduation. Step 4 is important because it helps identify the reasons why a student is flagged, leads to appropriate interventions that are based on student needs, and may help address school and district-wide issues. It is only by understanding the underlying causes of risk, the root causes, that we can truly and effectively intervene. After coming to understand in Step 4 the underlying causes of risk, in Step 5, the team selects and assigns students to appropriate interventions to help them get back on track. Based on the conclusions drawn in Step 4, in Step 5, the team assigns students to specific supports or interventions. In order to effectively assign and provide interventions, we encourage teams to begin by taking stock of the interventions that already exist and the resources that are currently available. Then, by pairing existing resources with student needs, the team matches students to specific interventions. Next, the team agrees upon a plan and next steps. Who will do what by when? Finally, the team communicates the intervention plan to key stakeholders and puts the plan into action. Interventions vary by type: attendance, behavior, or course performance, and intensity, or tier. Generally, in a 3-tiered intervention system, Tier 1 interventions are available and applied to all students in the school. Tier 2 interventions are moderately intensive and applied to small groups of students with common needs, and sometimes individual students. Tier 3 interventions are the most intensive and are provided to individual students with the highest level of need. This table demonstrates taking stock of interventions that already exist by tier. The table includes one intervention for each early warning indicator: attendance, behavior, and course performance, for tiers 1, 2, and 3. Schools will have multiple interventions for each early warning indicator at each tier. Having a tiered system of intervention helps match students' needs to the right interventions. There are many resources for identifying evidence-based practices and interventions, including those listed here. The Great Lakes Comprehensive Center is working with several national centers to identify evidence-based interventions that support improving attendance, behavior, and course performance. Step 6 is about monitoring students and interventions. In this step, the EWIMS team evaluates the impact of interventions on individual students and groups of students with common needs. Monitoring student progress involves reviewing flagged students and looking for evidence of progress. By monitoring red flags, the team identifies students or groups of students whose needs are not being met, students who are showing progress, and students who are no longer struggling, as well as patterns across these groups. Then the team can revisit steps 3, 4, and 5 to make necessary course corrections. In addition to monitoring students in step 5, teams also monitor the interventions themselves to see if they are working. In other words, was the right intervention implemented adequately to meet specific student needs? To do this, teams track whether interventions were implemented as intended, whether the student or students participated, and whether the duration and intensity were sufficient. If an intervention was implemented as planned, what was the outcome? How did students respond? Teams also track outcomes such as progress, fewer flags, changes, different flags, and patterns, similarities across groups of students who participate in an intervention. In Step 6, teams also seek anecdotal data, including checking in with families and appropriate stakeholders for their perspectives on how the intervention is serving the student. This may include checking in with the student for his or her perspective on how things are going. By monitoring interventions, the team can make necessary corrections and improve both individual student supports and the system of interventions available. We have come to the final step in the cycle. Step 7 embodies the commitment to continuous improvement. This is where teams review and make appropriate alterations to the process. Just as educators refine intervention plans for students, it is also important to refine the work of the EWIMS team. In this step, the EWIMS team reflects on each of the 6 previous steps. The conversation should focus on exploring what is working, what is not working, and how the work of the EWIMS team could be improved. For example, the team could analyze risk indicators and risk thresholds, or explore improvements in accessing reports. After reflection, the team can discuss specific changes to refine its work. We recommend carrying out Step 7 at least once a year. Along with understanding the steps in the EWIMS process, it's also important to understand that there are some potential challenges to implementing EWIMS. In the AIR study described earlier, in which 73 schools were randomly assigned to use or not use EWIMS, EWIMS showed promise. However, the study also found that it's challenging for schools to implement EWIMS. The top 3 difficulties were these: challenges in porting data into the tool, staff turnover and challenges getting new team members up to speed, limited staff time to fully implement EWIMS. EWIMS is a process of continuous improvement and adjustment. For best results, it is important to stick with the process and be patient, because the potential benefits to students and families are significant. For an in-depth exploration of all 7 steps in the EWIMS process, we encourage you to view the complete set of 8 EWIMS videos. The EWIMS Implementation Guide is another important resource for EWIMS teams to explore. On behalf of the Great Lakes Comprehensive Center, the Michigan Department of Education, and the students and families of Michigan, we thank you for your work on these important issues.